let's hear who tells lies. Because, listen, I'm not going to defend Trump's honesty. He's got that hyperbole thing. He's always saying this is the greatest economy ever and we've done more than anybody else, when that's not true. But let's listen to realize in order to do this, we have to go to our friends at the New York Times, a former newspaper, and travel to Knocklehead Road.
Oh, hey, hey, oh, hey, ho. Let's go waltzing down to Knocklehead Road.
Knocklehead Row, of course, is the op-ed section of the New York Times, and this is from the New York Times editors. In a letter Sunday to lawmakers, the White House laid out its latest proposal for addressing the border tumult. The administration called for more immigration and border patrol agents, very much needed, by the way. That's one of the problems. There's a reason there's a crisis. More detention beds, and, of course, $5.7 billion to build 234 new miles of border wall. The White House also demanded an additional $800 million for urgent humanitarian needs, such as medical support, transportation, and temporary facilities for processing and housing detainees. All very important. Translation, says the New York Times, a former newspaper. Translation: Mr. Trump's mass incarceration of migrant families is overwhelming an already burdened system that, without a giant injection of taxpayer dollars, will continue to collapse, leading to ever more human suffering. The situation is an especially rich example of the Trump doctrine: break something, then demand credit, and in this case, a lot of money, for promising to fix it. This is utter humbug. This is complete humbug. What they're blaming Trump for the collapse of these governments that has caused this onslaught of people. What they're saying is he's mean to incarcerate them. He's mean to hold them as he is supposed to do. So we're just supposed to let them flow into the country. They never follow out their own logic. I mean, what does that mean? They flow into the country. They are just allowed. Anybody who wants to can just pour in. There is no rule of law. Our compassion, our wonderful hearts, our wonderful virtue overrides the law. So we treat those people for whom we feel compassion one way, and those people who the media doesn't like, we treat an entirely different way. And here is the key point. They give themselves away at the New York Times. Any attempt to sell Mr. Trump's cruel immigration agenda with a veneer of humanitarian measures should be viewed with skepticism. In other words, anything that makes Trump look like a decent human being trying to solve a problem that he didn't cause must be stopped, because we hate Trump. You want to see how much they hate? They don't even know. They don't even know that hatred is what is governing them. They don't know that that's who they are. Frank Bruni, one of the biggest knuckleheads on Knocklehead Row, is on with Brian Stelter, and Stelter asks him, are you guys, the last editor of the New York Times was fired. Her name escapes me at the moment, but she was fired. When she was fired, she said the Times plays it straight, and now she no longer says that. She says it's just become an anti-Trump paper. And so here's Frank Bruni answering that charge.
But this idea that news coverage of Trump is negative, is too negative. Where does the truth lie there?
I disagree wholeheartedly with that. He's a singular president. He was a singular candidate. No one has lied like him. I mean, at that altitude, no one has had the sort of ethical problems that he does. No one has had the areas of ignorance. To call that out accurately is to end up with a body of coverage that is unusually negative, but it is absolutely appropriate to the man and the situation at hand.
So negative but accurate.
Yeah. Anti-Trump connotes driven by some sort of animus regardless of the facts. I don't think we've been anti-Trump. I think we have been negative, and I think that's the only honest way to cover this president.
What about tone, though? Do you think the tone is sometimes off?
Yes, I think the one way in which we leave ourselves vulnerable is our tone can become mocking and sneering, and I don't mean just on the opinion pages, where that's not so unusual, but sometimes in news coverage. When we do that, we hurt ourselves, because we give his supporters a way to say, look, they can't give him a fair shake because they feel so negatively toward him. So I think we do have to watch our tone.
We're not biased. He's Satan. That's why we do it, because he's the devil himself.